Hello everyone and welcome back. Callum here with another installment of Budget Blitz. We've got another deck tech here for you with the same restrictions as last time. No Majestics, no Legendaries. And this one's actually coming to us courtesy of Mr. Jacob Pearson, who is a calling champion. And it should be an interesting one because this time we're going to be binding our souls to the service of demons from another dimension in search of unbridled power. Sounds fun. What could possibly go wrong? Now, as you can see, the deck that we're looking at today is the Shadow Runeblade Chane, and it is a sweet one. So let's check it out. Alright, well, as you can see, we are definitely delving deep into shadowy territory here, as over half of our deck can be played from the Banish Zone. Chane has the super powerful hero ability of giving Runeblade or Shadow actions go again by making Soul Shackles, which are auras which stick around and banish cards from the top of your deck at the beginning of your action phase. The more you have, the more power you gain, but the faster you're going to fatigue, so there is a little bit of a balancing act there. However, a good rule of thumb to begin with, I think, is just be greedy. Make a Soul Shackle every turn, regardless of whether you're actually utilizing the go again or not, because the more cards you banish with Chane's ability, the more resources you're gaining, the bigger your turns are going to be later in the game. Because the idea with this deck is to start slow and build up. You mainly want to defend and sort of chip in with small attacks early. Nebula Blade's quite nice for this because even if it's only attacking for one, it still threatens to make a rune chant. And you want to build up your Soul Shackles and then go off with a couple of big ridiculous turns in the late game where you play 3 or 4 attacks in a row and really swing the momentum in your favor. Now, managing the number of blood debt cards in your Banish Zone is kind of key. More expensive attacks like Rifted Torment or Piercing Shadow Vice, they're good to get out of there when you can, but some of the sort of cheaper, more combo-y cards like Seeds of Agony and Riftbind, don't be afraid to sort of lose a little bit of health to your blood debt in order to save those cards up for your big turns, especially because every non-attack action matters when you're playing multiple Riftbinds in a turn. Now, you might notice that there is a super rare in this deck. Jacob asked me if supers were okay to include, and I thought, yeah, that's fine, because even though it's a rarity that isn't really getting printed anymore going forward, these aren't exactly difficult to obtain. And these Tome of the Arknights are really great in this deck because you have multiple ways to manipulate the top of your deck, whether that's by using the Dimensional Gateway or giving Crown of Dichotomy go again. You can do that with Chane's ability because it's a Runeblade equipment, which allows you to destroy Crown of Dichotomy, put an attack and a non-attack on top of your deck, and then draw them with Tome of the Arknight. The other thing to note here is that some of your attacks care about dealing arcane damage. And now usually your opponent will be able to control this through the use of Arcane Barrier, etc. However, most players are typically only going to run one piece of Arcane Barrier against a Runeblade. And as you can see, Vexing Malice deals 2 arcane damage, which means that you should almost always be able to turn on your Rip Through Realities and your Piercing Shadow Vices. So yeah, that's the basic game plan. If you want to make this deck even more powerful by branching out into sort of Majestic territory, there's plenty of old and new Majestics that fit well. Art of Wars are fantastic because they can give your attacks go again, pump your attacks up, but also banish attacks to draw 2 cards, which, as you can see, isn't really a downside in this deck because you can then play those attacks from the banished zone. As for Monarch cards, you've got things like Shadow Puppetry, Tome of Torment, and Shadow of Ursa. They're all great. They all play really nicely in this deck. So if you have any of those or you can trade for them, they'll really help to make your big turns even more ridiculous. But the deck, of course, doesn't need those cards to function, and it is a lot of fun, and it's a nice skill test, I think, for newer players, learning how to manage resources and play from different zones. So if you feel like dabbling in the dark side, give this a whirl, take it to an armory, and let us know how you do. We'll see you again next time for more sweet decks.